Welcome, Ecom Logistics Nation. Thank you for joining today's episode. We're on a mission to share e-commerce logistics insights, trends, successes, and challenges from the leaders and innovators in our space.
You start there at the vehicle line. That drives your fuel, your maintenance, your lease cost. And you're like, that is a lot of money to be spending on fuel.
Yeah.
An obscene amount, almost $300 million a year in fuel. Then you start thinking, what does that mean from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective? To think about having and causing more emissions and doing it the wrong way when there's an opportunity to do it right.
Welcome, Ecom Logistics Nation. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Mark Ang, co-founder and CEO of GoBolt. Mark's journey in the logistics industry is a story of embracing the ramen noodle entrepreneurial life when job security was available, seeing opportunity, listening to market needs, and embracing a vision for sustainability in the logistics industry. That has led to a business with over 1,000 employees, 15 facilities accounting for approximately 1.5 million square feet of warehouse space across North America. Mark, we're super excited to dive into your insights, learn more about your journey. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
And I'm even more excited because as far as tech, logistics, sustainability is concerned, this Canadian company that I've been watching for a while because we do a lot of innovation up here in Canada, but not as much, again, from an economies of scale perspective. So this is one to definitely watch and hear about it from a Canadian iconic organization, a startup.
I'm honored that we're being labeled as iconic, but we're super proud to be Canadian and excited to be across North America now.
Awesome. Well, Mark, to kick things off, can you share with us where the idea of GoBolt came from and maybe some highlights of your journey since launching in 2017?
Assume that the company started as GoBolt. In fact, we've actually rebranded 3 times and changed the business model twice since we started. So I didn't start out wanting to be a logistics guy. I actually wanted, as a kid, initially to be a marine biologist so that I could legally own a sea turtle. I then wanted to become a lawyer for some reason, then an accountant, and then ended up getting hired full-time to management consulting. I was supposed to start full-time for a Valley storage company. And the reason I started the Valley storage company was because my friends at U of T were paying $80 a summer to store a box. And I thought that was crazy. And so I said, I could probably do that for way less. And you can be 10 times more useful or a tenth of the cost. So we built a website. You could store your box for $24 for the summer, $6 a month. We'd come and pick it up, store it, and you'd see it in your online portal. Broke into a bunch of dorm buildings, handed out business cards, slipped them under dorm room doors, and put up flyers in front of urinals and inside of bathroom stalls. And with $500 and some sweat equity, we built a $20,000 a month recurring business in 2 weeks. And so raised a seed round and then started that company. And that got into the single digit millions, maybe touching 10 million of revenue in about a year and a half, 2-year period. Then we said, hey, we don't really want to be known as the guys that help people hoard their shit more efficiently when we're old and on rocking chairs. And so Hendrik and I decided to, within a week, pause all new customer pickups and pivot our infrastructure to be a logistics business. And that's how we got started.
I mean, I've heard about the whole pivot or persevere, right, as a business, but it's rare to see that you shift away from, because by the sounds of your revenues, it sounds like it was fairly a profitable organization. You just wanted more. Was it just the reason that you didn't want to be known as the people that help people hoard stuff, or was it something more than that? That was the catalyst. Was it market sizing? Was it growth trajectory? Why logistics? I mean, of course, you were doing a few elements of logistics, but like, why the pivot?
I think that you always start with like passion and then you make sense of the business decisions. And if the passion can't pay the bills or grow, then the passion probably goes into a special place and is called a hobby and maybe dies. And in this case, storage is a $45 billion industry, super sticky, really good unit economics. We weren't passionate about it. And so we holistically reinvented the business. And we were just lucky that we had all the necessary infrastructure. And we were already kind of getting drips and drabs of business clients through the consumer side. And so we said, pause, hard pivot. And we then sat on all that recurring revenue, because the nice thing about storage is it doesn't go away when you turn it off. And so we just actually had this like nest egg, and we just slowly churned out customers. Literally took years. In fact, we ended up selling off all the remaining customers to the largest self-storage company in Canada. They're publicly traded, and so we knew they would be looked after well. And there's actually still some customers that chose to not take that deal and are still in our storage facilities. So it's very hard to actually do that, which I think underpins why we were able to make that pivot, use the infrastructure, and then become this end-to-end supply chain solution.
From my vantage point, I would say, if you were to ask me, I would have probably chosen to keep both the businesses, to say, hey, I already have a warehouse. Let me keep this self-storage business on my side and keep its brand, keep it running behind the scenes, have an element. I wish I could make a decision of that nature that is hyper-focused like the way you did, but I want to walk through that thought process to say, no, it's like shut it down or put it aside. We're going to do something new.
We have these 4 lines of business. We build software for each of them. We have a go-to-market rhythm for each of them. And so long as you like change the lens, it is focused, right? It's within the logistics space. It's an end-to-end solution. If you stop there, that's the focus. When you go deeper, of course, you can say we can work on our truck division more. We can work on our parcel division more. But I'm really focused about being on that 10x better or a 10th the cost curve. The consumer side was just a lot of noise. We could acquire customers between, at our peak, like we were getting customers for $15 who were spending $100 a month and at least staying with us for a 12-month period. And then every single customer was a very loud voice. It was the only experience they had with the business. Whether you were 2 minutes late, 2 minutes early, whether you left a speck of dust here or there, I knew that it would be highly distracting for the team to pivot the business successfully and do that at the same time. Doing 2 disparate things, working with consumer clients directly versus with B2B merchants to serve their clients, I think those are 2 different rhythms. And I think would be a lot of whiplash for the company. So we didn't really think twice about it, to be honest. We just said, hey, it's going to be probably a little bit too much to take on, unless we wanted to, raise more money separately to then go do this thing.
Completely makes sense.
Today, we're hearing a lot more about sustainability, right? We've been talking sustainability for a very long time, but we're getting traction, and specifically with logistics companies making that pivot towards sustainable practices. A lot of that driven by tech advancements and certainly like a shift in consumer expectations and what the consumer actually wants. So you've been on the front side of that over the past several years. So I'm just curious how your journey with green initiatives and sustainability initiatives, like what was the origin? Where did that come from and start?
So as part of our holistic reimagining of what the storage business was going to be, we wanted to think about market sizing, potential, scale. And again, it started with the passion, but then it went to the metrics and the finances of it all. And so you start there at the vehicle line. That drives your fuel, your maintenance, your lease cost. And you're like, holy shit, that is a lot of money to be spending on fuel. Yeah. Like an obscene amount. Like, just to do some quick math, if you have 10,000 vehicles on the road every day and they're taking an average consumption, like you'd be spending potentially $800,000 a day in fuel. Like, run that out for the year, almost $300 million a year in fuel. Then you start thinking, holy shit, what does that mean from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective? And that's not something that we'd be proud of. Like, to think about having and causing more emissions and doing it the wrong way when there's an opportunity to do it right. And here's the thing, when we made that pivot in 2019, there was no commercial EV vehicle on the road, 0 viability. There were barely vans. And so we then became guinea pigs to a couple of like startups. And like, when I say guinea pig, when you turn left, the truck would go right. Like that level of guinea pig, okay? And like the battery going from 90% charged to 0 on the highway, like it was insane. And so we had to up the insurance. We had to ensure that the drivers that were in these vehicles were understanding the mission, because they were like test pilots. Right? It's like, imagine going up and then you F-22, it's like, this thing could blow up or maybe it won't. We wanted to really change the way logistics is run and perceived. Like, there's no really well-loved logistics company, friends, family, industry, like name a company that you love in logistics. Like, I don't think anything comes to mind. You can name a bunch that are familiar, but you're like, I don't love that company. And so what does it mean to actually challenge that status quo? And then what does it mean to then be doing good at the same time? And we wanted to make sure that we were positioned well for everything.
I just have to go back on a couple things, right? So first of all, the turn right, it goes left business. Like, isn't there a certification process before you put a vehicle on the road? Like,
100%.
I would think, yeah.
This is like the equivalent of giving, next time you guys play Xbox or PlayStation with a friend, invert their controller controls.
The inverted axis, exactly.
And like, they won't, you'll win every game no matter what. They missed that checkbox.
I do have to ask more about the topic of sustainability. What I will say, Mark, we have this conversation all the time, right? Like sustainability in logistics is a conversation that has been picked up numerous times. We have seen some organizations that have actually put in the effort. It's not just lip service, because we also can read through the greenwashing when there is greenwashing. You are meaningful about it. You're coming with statistics and you're saying things that make sense. Like what percent of your fleet today happens to be electric?
So 40% of our deliveries last month were done on an electric vehicle. Yeah, we're shooting for that to be north of 90% by the end of the year.
And your fleet supports, I would assume, a certain amount of zone, right? Like your fleet can't support all delivery in any region.
It's a really good point, and how we manage it and make it make sense. I mean, the one reason EV adoption has been very poor in the industry is reliability and downtime. Downtime is a killer. It's either downtime that's caused by the vehicle itself or downtime due to a poor way to operate the vehicle. And so any company that is just, I'm just going to get an EV, I'm going to get a charger, we're going to cut a couple checks, and then we're going to start driving it, and we're going to run it the same way as if it was a diesel truck. You're destined to fail. We did that. And then we changed and we said, we need to build our own algorithm, our own learning models, and we need to understand how these things actually behave and conform to it. Like, it's really hard to change the direction of a river. Generally, Mother Nature will flow how it flows, and EV vehicles will behave how EV vehicles behave. And so you need to just conform to it. And so we have intelligence on driver behavior, vehicle range, weather, roadway that we're traveling, what speed, stop and go, highway, payload degradation over the route, that sort of thing. And that's all learning. It's all getting better, right? And you'll use regenerative braking differently than Dan, differently than me. But I might be able to stretch my range by 1.5x. Whereas Dan, if he's a bit heavier on the acceleration, heavy on the brake, he might actually degrade it by 70%. And so there's a lot that goes into it. We also have like a non-homogeneous fleet on the EV side and the net zero side, where we can use a range of cargo bikes, EV sedans, EV vans, EV 5 tons, and the routing algorithm needs to account for that.
Yep.
Like, we had a hackathon 6 months ago, and one of our chief routers, he runs our AI group and runs all the algorithms, built this like truck as a warehouse concept. This is really prevalent in New York, but he built it so it scales. And basically it'll say, hey, where are there clusters where we can deploy a 5-ton truck with pre-sorted routes and EV bikes inside and drop it there and have it become the mobile hub dynamically. There's a lot of companies that do this, but they're like, this is our corner, this is our shipping container. We'll like replenish it and that becomes the hub. But to be able to move it dynamically, you start to be able to actually generate better returns and better yield, but you need technology to do it. So we've been able to manage a pretty big range because it's across a non-homogeneous fleet, but it requires technology to do that properly.
Absolutely. I mean, the unit economics in New York City to get a fixed location where you put a container, whereas you can just park anywhere. The worst case scenario, you might get a ticket. Like, I mean, strategically speaking, it makes so much more sense. And if we go beyond the EV side of things, right, when you look to the end-to-end part of it, you also have 1.5 million square feet of roof, technically speaking. Okay, so there's sustainability in the transportation side, but harnessing energy as well as sustainability inside the warehouse. Could you kind of speak to that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you see that?
It's super important. I mean, if we're charging EV vehicles with diesel generators, that's not really doing much, right? So I think we need to understand where our electricity sources are coming from. Fortunately, a lot of the provinces and states we operate have an increasing amount of renewable. A lot of it is underpinned by hydro. So we are actually quite comfortable with the sources of electricity. A lot of our landlords who we lease from have or are looking to install solar panels on the roof to help offset the need to pull from the grid itself. And so those are projects that you can do in partnership.
I want to tee up a conversation that I know the both of you are going to geek out on. And Search Mark saw that you have actually gone down the path of building your own WMS, OMS, TMS solution. And if we go back to maybe teenish, maybe there weren't as many packaged software solutions that there are available today in the market, but you obviously took a pretty big bet and decided to build that tech infrastructure yourself. So what was the North Star for doing that? Did you evaluate some software that was in the market and it just wasn't a fit for where you wanted to take the company? Or did you just always know, hey, I want to be in control of my product roadmap and functionality and features, so I'm just going to go ahead and build this internally?
There's definitely a level of control that I prefer to have over how we run the business. And we've evaluated off the shelf WMS tools, and it all became like quite inflexible. And then we put ourselves in the shoes of our merchant and said, is that the right way to be loved by the merchant? What is a nice to have versus a need to have? And what's going to really unlock the next thing for you? It's hard to then partner with an off the shelf tool that would want to then come to the table and do that.
I've always advocated for, if you are a tech first organization, a tech logistics organization, right, you need to take into consideration a couple things. If you are purely a 3PL and your business is running on a 10% op margin, or it's running on a 20% op margin because you have transportation opportunities built in, it's a different conversation than if you're trying to build an end-to-end ecosystem from a merchant perspective and you start saying, what pieces are off the shelf and what can I actually bring to the table? I'll say this. Most of the pick pack use cases, right? Like the function of receive something, pick it and pack it and ship it, right? And the function of doing sortation as an example, or cross-docking as an example, consolidation, all of those things within the four walls, those functions good in WMS. But then you have to start talking about transportation. That's your secret sauce. What are you going to bring? Now that's a different package. How well does it work with the package that you currently have? Do I build that? Do I buy that? There is the other side, which is the merchant experience, the order orchestration, all of that side of things. My argument usually goes down to that WMS level. It's like the number of times new scenarios pop up and the amount of software development effort that needs to be put in, the lean engineering effort that needs to be put in to actually optimize what you have built. I think that becomes a little difficult. Other than that, I would say I wholeheartedly agree with you. But it's like four wall pieces.
Yeah.
I think packet solutions, just because the amount of investment that has gone into these packet solutions and the amount of scenarios that they have had to address, of course, if you ask for something new, it's got to go on a roadmap. But chances are a lot of things are already addressed on the roadmap, but you need to find that right solution for yourself.
And we've all bought software and we've all heard this is the best thing since sliced bread. And we've all then opened the pack to find a bunch of mold. And it's like, this is not what I was sold.
Yeah.
And then you think about the consequences of ripping that out in a fulfillment environment. And it's actually not pragmatic.
Yeah.
And so I think, you mentioned something good, which is like the optimizations that you can make over time.
Yeah.
Like you could get probably the best industry vets in a boardroom for a month to whiteboard what the best WMS solution would be. And they will still miss edge cases that uncover opportunity, right? Like we have a client that's coming in, they might have 8,000 pallets of wholesale product. They have very limited SKUs. There's like 20, 25 SKUs and their velocity is very good. Like they're turning every month.
Yep.
And so that's like a ton of turnover. And so does everything need to be put away? Can we actually create a physical offshoot lane on inbound to like stage, rework, and then actually have to go outbound almost same day or next day? Most companies would be like, no, you got to put away, then you got to pull, then you got to stage, you got to load out. And it's like, it has to go through this like predetermined flow because that's how it was built.
Exactly.
Actually uncovering areas to drive flexibility within the warehousing environment is super great. And that uncovers market because they might have a target price amount, which they do.
Yep.
And the only way to meet that is by changing the flow. But if the software layer prevents you from doing that, well, then you're fucked.
I know.
And so we need to definitely like reinvent how that works. And we're able to do that on the fly. The other thing on the transportation side is there's so many different types of appointment. Like you have a typical day-long parcel window. You might have a time-based parcel window. You might have reverse logistics, curbside, threshold, room of choice, white glove, haul away, reload, inventory pickup, cross dock, whatever. And you need to stitch this all together. I've not seen a great TMS that eloquently does that. So it's just hard to think about doing that off the shelf.
Yeah, I mean, TMS, I can 100% say that. Even the terminology TMS, right? Like there is TMS, which is like LTL, FTL. When you say that word TMS, that's all it invokes. Small parcel is like everyone's still trying to figure out what the terminology for small parcel orchestration happens to be. Small parcel, multi-carrier shipping engine, small parcel TMS, right? It's not even defined. And again, it's been around for a while. It's been in use. But when you combine the two and you're trying to orchestrate both, it's a gong show. Like literally there is nothing good out in the market. Work in progress, but nothing good. Or maybe there is something you might have seen you can tell us, but yeah.
No, honestly, if you order a sofa from us and we're delivering to your place in Quebec, we won't flight and pick that order until the day before your booking appointment. Like just things like that, limit the amount of dock space, reduce our cost per pallet, reduce chances of error or damage. Super simple. That's not out of the box. That actually, like most WMSs will not have that level of integration to an appointment system, to a wave system, to how you stage it. So just something as simple as that. If you want to offer a time-based, appointment-based delivery window up to a month in advance, how do you do that?
And it's just really expensive to implement. I can tell you, I've worked on solutions of that nature in the past using tier one systems, but the amount of configuration, testing, upstream system where that offering is created to translating that offering into the WMS understanding, and then WMS constantly prioritizing that particular window to waive it, drop it, make sure that the person that's supposed to press run runs it at the exact same time they are supposed to. And then on the flip side, making sure that the transportation also understands this was chosen because of this reason, which is another packet solution that has to pick it. And then the driver has to understand why they are doing what they are doing. I mean, it is hard in tier one. But when you have the economies of scale, yes, right? Like you can spend that kind of money, but that one initiative in a large organization to say, we are going to do time definite appointment based delivery as a solution. It's probably a $8 million initiative just to enable that one feature within some of those organizations. I'm just calling that out.
And then think how many companies would deliver enough deliveries to amortize that cost and make it make sense before that tool's obsolete. They might lose the customer. It's just a very expensive endeavor, and the market will not clear. And so you either need to be restoration hardware and you build that tool yourself and you force it upon all your 3PLs because that's the service you want to drive. Yep. But then you underserve basically the entire rest of the market. And so you have this lag between the ultra premium who can charge really high prices and then really afford expensive back end builds to like the general populace and the average kind of consumer approach. And so I think just democratizing that type of complexity, you just do and you layer on to the onion. Like my whole point on this was you just build it brick by brick. It's really hard to plunk down this massive structure all at once. You need to learn from your customer, have a little bit of thought leadership to be ahead of the curve, but then just be really acute and listening on what's needed from the market and make sure that you can do it at a rate that clears, which involves operational design, technological design, and then you can do it.
One question, because the peers or the cohort within this particular space, if you were to look at the segment in general, the end-to-end tech-enabled fulfillment services, very few have actually done that transportation integration the way you have actually achieved. So you already have a level of differentiation when we start talking about some of that. But historically, and the history is not too long because this industry has evolved since about 2015, 16 time frame, right? Like the traditional 3PL to pivot into this type of like tech-enabled solutions. And I think Shopify's got a lot to do with it. What we have noticed is two directions as future growth are concerned. And I want to get your opinion on this. One goes, hey, I got really good technology. Let me now start selling my tech. So that's one part. You've seen that. And then there is the other one saying, okay, I've evolved. And, some of the names we heard as your clients already, like the IKEAs of the world, right? You have already started moving into a larger segment, right? A larger footprint 3PL competitive space. Where does GoBolt go? Like if you look forward 5 years, 10 years, do you see yourself splitting out to say, I got such amazing tech that I'm actually going to go sell tech while doing what I'm doing? Because it's lucrative and it's got tech valuation, 10x top line? Or do I go become a very tech-enabled, enterprise-grade execution third-party logistics company that, is 4 times EBITDA, but $5 billion in revenue? You know what I'm saying? Like, so where does GoBolt go?
It's a really good question. I feel like I'm in a board meeting right now. The short answer is it goes both directions because you incubate ideas by actually doing the thing and you then can capitalize on it and build software tools and scale it. It doesn't mean that the tools we build can't service another ICP, and that might be a different industry, it might be a different region, a whole whack of things. And we're having conversations with folks that on the surface look competitive, but they're like, hey, we'd love to use this tool. This actually would like really augment how we do this. And then we could get access to your transportation network. That would be amazing. And so I think it goes both directions or not, but I think that you can't have the same people working on both. I think the level of like rigor is different for both. They're highly rigorous, but different ways. The level of patience, speed is different in both. The level of risk you can take is different in both. And so I think that it needs to be really thoughtfully designed. But we see a future, certainly within the next 5 years, where our software is utilized by partners. We have nothing to do with the operation. We're augmenting their business with all that we bring to the table, transportation included. And we continue to run world-class warehousing solutions for scaling brands and enterprise brands. Both exist in our mind.
Very cool.
Today, I've heard you say that you are very open with what you're building and you are having conversations with competitors. You are sharing information with the market. So with all that collaboration and all that sharing, any advice you could give to someone who hasn't started this journey yet? Whether it's lessons learned or just if you were just going to go down this sustainability path in logistics, which is super hard to do you have any advice of where to start and maybe what are some of those watch out experiences that you've had over the past couple of years?
I think you need a leader that's going to lead that project or division, depending on how big the business is, that's like truly passionate about the problem that's being solved. Because if you're doing it for marketing purposes, to keep up with the customer demand that just came in and is a knee-jerk reaction, or any of the wrong reasons, that's not going to like have you persevere. Like this is a really entrepreneurial pursuit. You're going to get kicked in the nuts like 50 times. You're going to have a ton of challenges. You're going to have to run through brick walls.
Yeah.
You need to be really passionate about what you're doing to be able to persevere. And like, it is really entrepreneurial. And there are such things as having entrepreneurs within larger businesses, but you need to be able to anoint them the leader of that thing and then give them the free rein to go do it. So I think be prepared to incentivize the right behavior, be prepared to create the space to do what needs to be done, be prepared to make a lot more investment than you're probably dimensioning in your current spreadsheets to make it work, both in ops and technology. And I think the way that I've seen off the shelf technology work for EVs, it just doesn't. And so there's a lot that needs to be done here.
Amazing.
Appreciate that, Mark. Listen, thank you so much for joining. This was an absolute awesome conversation. We will certainly be watching your journey as it continues to unfold over the next several years. But as a way of wrapping up, want to give you the opportunity to share with the audience, where's the best place to follow you? Where do they go to learn more about GoBolt?
LinkedIn's probably the best. Mark Ang. When they let you customize your LinkedIn URL, I was the first one to apparently do it of the Mark Angs in the world. So just Mark-Ang on LinkedIn is how you
Beautiful.
can find me.
I actually have Nanad, just my first name.
Oh, lucky duck.
There you go.
Awesome, guys.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, listen, thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ninad Acharya, CEO and co-founder of Fulfillment IQ, and I'm here with
Dan Call, CRO and partner at Fulfillment IQ. We're the team behind the Ecom Logistics podcast. Our mission is to provide you with genuine insights from our work alongside logistics leaders to help you improve your supply chain.
In the Ecom Logistics podcast, we share the knowledge and the insights we've gained from working alongside amazing brands, retailers, 3PLs, and VCs, so you can make the most out of your supply chain journey.
If you like what you're hearing, we'd truly appreciate your support with a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting channel. Your feedback not only keeps us going, but also helps others find the podcast. If you think Fulfillment IQ can assist you, or if you have an idea related to logistics, just reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're always up for a chat and ready to explore new possibilities together.
Stay tuned to the Ecom Logistics podcast on your favorite podcast platform for fresh and practical insights into e-commerce and logistics. Until next time, let's keep making a difference.